Elsewhere in the UK, the BBC is once again under political and public scrutiny following the resignation of Director General Tim Davie and new CEO Deborah Turness. The departure came after a revelation that a Panorama documentary on Donald Trump included a misleading edit of one of the president's speeches, an error critics say exposed deeper editorial failings within the corporation. Trump has since threatened to sue for $1 billion in damages, alleging defamation and political bias. BBC Chairman Samir Shah has apologised for what he called an error of judgment, but insists the broadcaster remains committed to impartial journalism. With MPs now pressing Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy to explain the government's stance, the row comes at a pivotal moment for the BBC as it enters negotiation on its funding model and future mandate. To explore the implications for media trust and political neutrality, I was earlier joined by our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey. Simon, what more do we know about this new BBC scandal? It's the biggest crisis to hit the broadcaster in years. Do you know anything about the timeline of the events that led to both Tim Davie and Deborah Turness stepping down?
Yeah, and it's been seized upon by Donald Trump, who is never shy of getting publicity for himself. He loves to sue, and he is threatening to sue the BBC for $1 billion.
There's reason.
And there's reason. The reason being that a segment of a speech that he made in that infamous time just before the Capitol riots was two bits of what he said were pushed together to come up with a meaning that isn't one that was something that he said. He didn't say
out of context.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the thing here really is because this is an important thing that happened, that Capitol riots, and it was something that has been brought up time and time again, was that he incited violence, that he was taken, he was impeached for himself. The BBC, as an independent, impartial broadcaster, needed to tread very carefully around that, and this is just such an obvious mistake, glaring error made by a very well-known, famous programme that is supposed to have the highest editorial standards. And the main problem here is that they didn't apologise quick enough. They didn't come out and put it out into the open and say that we messed up, we apologise. They did not retract it or put an apology out there, apologise to Donald Trump. They should have done all of these things. We wouldn't really be sitting here now. And so then, obviously, because there's that vacuum, there's time for conspiracy theories to swirl, that this has been pushed under the carpet. But I think there's quite a lot more at play here, especially for the critics of the BBC, which it has many. So, a lot of people see it as left-leaning. It's also a tax that is a sort of an enforced tax here.
Yeah,
a lot
it's
of people
called the
say
TV licence, isn't it?
TV licence that everyone has to pay. If you watch any kind of output, it doesn't even need to be BBC output. If you watch any kind of TV or radio, you have to pay this. A lot of people say that's a very regressive tax at a time when living standards, living costs are high.
And they're not enjoying the content.
Wages aren't going up. I would say that a lot of people, the BBC has so many hours of content that comes out that mistakes are going to be made.
Absolutely.
It's much more about how you treat those mistakes when they happen.
It's not the crime, it's the cover-up.
This just doesn't look good, especially when it's Donald Trump, especially when it's a right-wing US government, and Donald Trump has repeatedly said, complained about BBC coverage. It just doesn't look good. I would say, when you go, your local journalists, you're online, you've got hours and hours and hours of content that's remarkably good and good journalism. It's just the way they dealt with this that was wrong. But there's other things, like the license fee renewal is up in 2027. In a digital world now where everyone consumes content in different ways.
Younger audiences as well.
Younger audiences, a lot of people don't pay the TV license. Is it working? Is this kind of regressive way of taxing people? And I think probably things will need to change, and they should change, because I don't think the BBC model can continue. If you're looking in 10 years' time, are we still going to be asking people to pay £150 every year to, when a lot of people won't, especially young people? So But I think, there's so many different things here at play. You've got when Boris Johnson was in power, he hired quite a few conservative-leaning, right-wing-leaning people to go into the BBC to try and make it a little bit more, what he would say independent. And there's a lot of question marks over that. Yes, exactly. So, but the BBC as an institution is still incredibly well respected around the world. We've just been
really great content.
This program called Celebrity Traitors, which everyone's been talking about.
Strictly Come Dancing in my house.
And you've got that, and then you've got obviously when you have your Wimbledons or you have a coronation, the
Match
BBC
of the
are
day.
absolutely perfect at that. So, it's just this was like a very sensitive thing for them to mess up, and they messed up big time, and they should have been absolutely, much more open and honest about that. And it's and now you've seen two of the big bosses go, which a lot of people are quite confused by, but Donald Trump has leapt on it and is threatening to sue. Whether that happens, and if that happens, that will be huge, because then who pays for that? Is it the BBC that pays for that? Does the government help out $1 billion?
It's us, isn't it?
It's not a small amount of money. Yeah, it might be the licence fee payers, but let's see.
Yes, let's see how this story develops next week. Thanks, Simon.